City Hall Plaza. Over the course of Boston's 12 21st century championships, it's seen awkward dancing,
Go fellas, there you go!
commercial catchphrases,
Bingo! We got bingo!
workplace mottos. All as part of the rolling rallies, parading championship trophies through the city for the city. But before Boston became this modern-day title town, City Hall Plaza served as host to an event that, well...
If we were to do that now, could think of how embarrassing it would be. But the reason we did it at the time is we were Loserville. We hadn't won anything.
The Boston Bruins drafted Ray Bourque 8th overall in the 1979 draft, and his impact at age 19 was immediate as the Calder Trophy winner. But more than that, he somehow filled what was an enormous hole left by the end of Bobby Orr's Bruins career.
He came in, it'd be like having to replace Frank Sinatra in the studio, and he came in, and for 21 glorious seasons, he gave that team strength, stability. I think easily one of the three best defensemen in NHL history.
He saw the game and played the game at a different level than pretty much everybody, but he brought it down to where he could help every individual player as a teammate.
The combination of defense, offense, on the attack, meticulous in his own end, really made him the perfect defenseman.
Bourque was named an All-Star in every season he played in Boston. He won the Norris Trophy 5 times. But more than any personal accolade, he yearned to win the Stanley Cup. Bourque led the Bruins to the Cup final in '88. Wayne Gretzky's powerhouse Oilers swept them. By the time Bourque reached the final again in 1990, Gretzky had moved on to star for the Kings. Bourque thought this was Boston's time.
In 90 here on Boston, I thought, 88 we didn't match up well with the Oilers, but 90 I thought we matched up really well.
We had two really good cracks, obviously in 88 and 90. 90, everybody felt that we had our best crack at it there.
That's what was so disappointing, is only winning one game in 90 and having a really good first game and falling short and tripled overtime, and then we could never get it going. And I thought we had a team really to compete that year, so that was very disappointing.
The next 2 seasons, the Bruins lost in the Eastern Conference Finals. But for Bourque, widely known not just as the best defenseman in hockey, but one of the best players, period, the losing extended to the negotiating table.
These guys took Ray Bourque to arbitration. I mean, think of it. They took him to arbitration.
The big question in camp isn't whether or not the Bruins will make the playoffs again. It's whether Ray Bourque will start and end his 15th season in Boston.
Do you get the feeling that this will work out all right? I mean, to everyone's satisfaction, both sides, or do you think that you've reached it?
I'm hoping it will.
There's nothing more I'd like to do is to finish my years in Boston and play here for the rest of my career. To see if it's going to happen is really out of my hands.
There's nothing we can do. It's going to matter. We just hope that it gets resolved in our favor, and that means Ray playing here.
It was 1993. Bourque filed for arbitration at a reported $4.25 million. His award came in at $2 million less.
By that point, he's one of the greatest defensemen of all time, one of the great Bruins of all time, an incredible captain and ambassador, and just stood for everything and put up with all their... And they take him to arbitration.
You're guarding Jeremy Jacobs' pocketbook. You're going to go in there with every negative thing you could say about Ray, and I'm sure they did. Typically, teams try to stay out of it because it can leave scars. To Ray's credit, I don't think it did. He ended up making fine contracts pre and post arbitration.
We didn't want to continue to go through this with a player like Ray, so we tried to resolve it with a long-term contract with at a salary range that he would accept, and we were able to.
After the '92 playoffs, the Bruins wouldn't make it out of the conference semifinals with Bourque. It fit right in with the rest of the Boston sports scene.
The Red Sox would go out every year, they'd tease you, and then they'd end up losing. And the Patriots were god-awful. People forget, in the mid-'90s, early 90s, they had the lowest attendance of any NFL team in the league. The Celtics were the only team that delivered, and they hadn't won since '86. So at that point, yes, we're sitting there as losers.
Harsh? By the start of the new millennium, Boston was in a certified championship drought. The Bruins hadn't won since 1972 and finished the 96-97 season as the worst team in hockey. The Celtics had won in '86, but were currently mired in the Rick Pitino era.
Larry Bird's not walking through that door, fans. Kevin McHale's not walking through that door, and Robert Parrish is not walking through that door. And if you expect them to walk through the door, they're going to be gray and old.
The Red Sox spent the 90s steering into the curse.
This El Nino thing, I think, is going to put a damper on us all spring.
And had yet to sign Manny Ramirez in free agency.
Bueno.
The Patriots spent the early 90s as a joke, and the late 90s recovering from Bill Parcells' departure.
I'm not trying to be cute here, okay? I'm just going to say, they want you to cook the dinner, at least they ought to let you shop for some of the groceries.
It was the golden age of Boston sports misery. Boston fans expected to lose. That extended to Bourque, who, in his 21st season, came to the realization he'd never hoist the Stanley Cup in a Bruins sweater.
I think it was almost predictable at that point at the end of the year that Raymond was not going to win a cup in his lifetime. What were his intentions, and then could the Bruins get something out of it?
If you were a real fan, you rooted for him to win a cup, and it wasn't going to happen here. I mean, the fact is that was a certainty.
I stayed here for almost 21 years because I just loved it. I never thought I would ever leave. Circumstances changed in terms of, what happened there in the last couple or 2 or 3 years that, I just thought it should never happen in Boston in terms of not having a competitive team at all.
There were nights where we would talk and he would not know what the right answer was, whether to go somewhere else or not.
He stuck it out, and if they were winning cups, he would have stayed. And he would have put up with their bull all the way to the end. He just had to win.
Pretty much the only thing left for me to do, and I wanted to compete again. That wasn't going to happen here at the end, so I needed to go somewhere else.
He called Harry Sinden and requested a trade to a contender. Initially, Bourque wanted to remain on the East Coast to be close to his wife and kids back home in Massachusetts.
Now, what a lot of people do forget, too, is that Ray's preference was to go to the Flyers. And Harry liked better what Colorado was offering.
Bourque was dealt to the Avalanche, a team with a strong roster that had been on the doorstep of the finals in the previous season. Not his preference, but it gave him the chance to contend.
I was favoring one of the East Conference teams simply because of the travel and my family and all that. I knew that the chances of that happening, I knew there might not be a chance of that. Coming here to Colorado, I mean, I'm psyched. They're a good young team and a very talented team, and they've had their struggles at times this year because of injuries, but I think they got everybody healthy right now and they're ready to do a run, and they made some moves to really bolster their lineup. So I'm thrilled and excited to be coming to Colorado.
It was one of the most gracious gestures in executive history in Boston sports. Harry Sinden doing that for our beloved defenseman, getting him to a place where he could finally get that cup, because otherwise he would have retired as hockey's version of Ernie Banks.
According to Sweeney, Bourque's former teammates in Boston didn't begrudge him for leaving, even if it signaled a harsh reality for the Bruins.
Within our locker room, I will tell you, there wasn't one person that looked sideways at that decision. Everybody realized what that decision was about. And in a lot of ways, it really was an indictment of the fact that we weren't good enough at that time.
I mean, how pathetic is it that one of the great players of all time, who loves it here, wants to be here, is willing to put up with it, has to leave because he can't win, because the team won't support him or the team can't get its act together. It was really a reflection on the team.
Boston looked to the West to live playoff hockey vicariously through its departed star as its own team went home at the end of the regular season.
Not the greatest organization at that time, and he stuck it out for 20 freaking years through all of it, through all their crap. And if anyone ever deserved to get out and win somewhere else, he deserved it.
I know I've always said all along that, you know, why go somewhere for a couple of months and it wouldn't feel the same. Well, I'm going to compete for the Cup.
How people supported me when I left is unseen and unheard of.
After getting knocked out in the conference finals in the 2000 playoffs, Colorado advanced to the Stanley Cup final in 2001.
Even though we were a very talented team, we went into New Jersey down 3-2, where nobody was giving us a chance to beat the defending champs. And for me, it was an incredible, surreal experience because I knew that could be my last game, Game 6.
Down 3-2 in New Jersey, the Avalanche forced a Game 7 in Denver. Bourque's quest was the talk of the town.
Everyone's pulling for him. I'm pulling for the guy. But you hope he gets it. You know, he's kind of towards the end of his career, and it'd be a shame for a guy to play that long and not win one. But, you know, they're one game away, and hopefully they'll get it.
Former teammates like Don Sweeney attended in person, and the city of Boston watched from afar.
We were in touch quite a bit during that playoff run, you know, and I think the whole city kind of got on board, and knowing what it would mean to him to do it was, you know, was pretty damn unique.
I remember I was at a wedding. I was sort of put in charge of watching. You don't watch it on your phones in those days, maybe sneaking in a back room and then going out to the mic stand and updating the score for the wedding. So people were following it, people cared, I remember.
The game ended 3-1 in victory. Bourque did what he left Boston to do in his final NHL game.
His last shift was as good as you could peel the calendar back 5 or 10 years, and he was still performing at that level.
I mean, they wanted him to go back, he could have played. Knowing what he had sacrificed to go out there and do that, and to move past a historic career of one franchise, I knew he wouldn't play again because he won.
When Joe Sakic hands the cup to him immediately, it's like, oh my God, he did it in his last game. I mean, as great as the Ted Williams home run was in his final at bat, holding the cup as your final career crowning moment is unbeatable.
Perhaps the only way to beat that moment would be if Bourque was celebrating a championship with the Bruins.
Everything I experienced in Denver after winning with the parade and the celebrations, all I could think about was, imagine doing this in Boston.
I want to thank the Boston Bruins for all the good things that happened there over 20 years. I will always be a Bruin in my heart. I want to thank Harry Sinden for giving me my first opportunity in Boston and this chance in Colorado.
Bourque was retiring. He wouldn't be celebrating a cup with the Bruins. That didn't mean he wouldn't celebrate with the city of Boston.
I've gotten great support here, and this is home for us, so, you know, we're back, and the cup will be here a few times this summer, so we're going to enjoy it.
It's a little muddled because it was 20 years ago, but I know there were some folks that ended up calling Mayor Menino that were just friendly with Ray over the years, and I think they pitched it to Mayor Menino to do this event and celebration. I think they said that Ray could bring the cup to City Hall Plaza, and the mayor decided to go ahead and do it.
Bourque's friends may have brought the idea to the table, but Bourque himself was not comfortable with it when approached by the city. At least not at first.
Somebody from the mayor's office called my agent and asked if we would be willing to do that, and right away I said no, I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to embarrass the Bruins, and then Steve Pryor was my agent, and you know, he says, what about if the Bruins sign off on it? I'm like, you know, that would be the only way I would do it. And so Mike O'Connell was the GM back then. He signed off on it.
He did have to be, you know, convinced to do it. I think I remember that. The Bruins were kind of silent on it, from what I remember. I think, you know, their silence spoke volumes.
O'Connell may have given it his blessing, but others with the Bruins, like Harry Sinden, weren't keen on their city celebrating another team's championship.
Harry came out on my show the day of this event and basically said, we love Ray. It should be about Ray. It shouldn't be about the city or whatever. They were furious at it, and they had no part, obviously, in it and wanted nothing to do with it.
Yeah, I mean, I've never asked Harry this question, but knowing Harry as well as I do, again, he would have been supportive of Raymond. He just wouldn't have thought it would need to happen as a rally in downtown Boston. And that's probably as simple as I could put it.
I suspect there was a germ in Harry, which is he didn't have to trade him. He honored the request. He could have told Ray, listen, you're our property. You're the reason we do sell tickets. So again, knowing Harry for all these decades, my suspicion is inside he felt it was a betrayal to him personally.
I don't think Bourque meant it as a taunt. I think he probably meant it as the fans would like to see you with it, and you mean a lot to these people, so stand in front of them.
An estimated 10 to 20,000 people packed into City Hall Plaza on June 13, 2001 to celebrate Bourque, the fan favorite who returned with the Stanley Cup they watched him win with another franchise, because theirs was still 10 years away from winning one of its own.
What I felt at the time, still feel, is this is the entertainment business. If you're an entertainer, try to give people what they want. And I think enough people wanted to be there. I thought he handled it with dignity, and I thought it was a tasteful event.
It was incredible coming back and being, accepted back kind of thing, and knowing that people were cheering for you and happy for you. So they know where my heart is, and I certainly know where their heart is as well.
In the moment, it felt like this would be the only championship Boston would be celebrating for some time, even tangentially.
At that point in time, it felt pretty bleak in terms of whether we were ever going to see another championship in Boston again, which now, looking back on it, is pretty laughable.
Yeah, I kind of joke about that we kind of kicked it off with that event.
7 months later, the New England Patriots would be celebrating their first of 6 Super Bowl titles at the very place Boston cheered on Bourque lifting the Stanley Cup. Duckboats would carry champions through the streets and waterways of Boston 12 times over the next 20 years.
We were so pathetic and we were such Loserville that we had to have a player on another team have a championship parade because we couldn't win them. And then the next thing you know, Brady and Belichick get here and, we've had 13 or whatever it's been. So it's like, that ties up neatly.